Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a doozy. So if you have some decluttering to do, some laundry to fold, some dishes to do, or if you're just stewing on the couch, it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be long. Hopefully you don't mind. If you guys enjoy collection videos, this one's definitely right up your alley. Hopefully you guys like it. If you do, give it a thumbs up just for the sake of my arm and all the swatching that I did, because I did go through and swatch all of these palettes, 8 to 10 shades of each palette, if not every shade. Did I say? This is my eyeshadow palette collection video. I think I have like 70 to 75 palettes sitting in front of me. The worst part is, in this video, I'm only including palettes that are still currently available because to me, I think it's cruel just to even show palettes that are limited edition, because I know I've watched videos before where I'm like, oh my God, I need that palette. The shades are beautiful. And they're like, just kidding. It's limited edition, so you can't get it. So I just didn't think it was fair to do that. All the palettes in this video are 5 or more. So quints and above. I did not include quads, trios, anything like that, because I don't know, those aren't really palettes in my opinion. And the main reason for this video is I'm really trying to declutter my eyeshadow collection. And honestly, sitting down and swatching all of these really did help me narrow down which ones that I want to declutter, which I think I'll talk about in a future video. So that intro was way too long. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm gonna start off with a couple of the Huda Beauty palettes because that's what I have on my eyes today. Specifically the Huda Beauty New Nudes palette. Now these palettes retail for $65. Every now and then these will go on sale. I know the Desert Dusk was 50% off for quite a while, but the last I checked, the new Nude palette is still $65. Obviously you need to be a fan of like soft pinks, mauves, and a few like flecks of purples here and there. I personally love this palette for these specific shades. Now, the mattes are great. I'm someone that personally loves Huda Beauty shadows. I think the formula is amazing. I have so many of her mini obsessions, which I've been a fan of for so long. But these shades here, Crave, Daydream, Fantasy, and Charmed, they kind of have that marble vibe to them. They're more like eyeshadow toppers. You can get them to work on their own, but by themselves, they don't have that much of a pigmented base. It's more of this like glaze. On my eyes today, I have some of Secret, Tickle, Raw, and Crave. I think I did go in with a little bit of Charmed on the outer corner. It's just a very pretty, whimsical palette. I personally love these shades on brown eyes. I think they make them pop. If you have any bits of hazel in your eyes, I feel like these colors really pull it out. However, if $65 is not in your budget, I do have some other alternatives. I don't have dupes. I'm using the word dupe loosely here for every single palette, but ones that instantly popped out, I went ahead and set aside. So I'm not saying these are formula dupes by any means. More than anything, they are color scheme options. So if you're just loving the vibes of these soft mauves, purples, pink tones, the Colourpop Menage a Muah palette would be a great option for you. I know I have a video where I did a tutorial on this. Any palette that I have a tutorial on, I will be sure to link down below. So in here, you do have some glitter options. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not saying this is an exact dupe. It's more of a color scheme variation of the palette. But you have some really cool mattes in here that have like glitter suspended in them. For instance, After Midnight. This is a shade where if you want to keep the sparkle on your lid, I would recommend applying it with a flat shader brush or your finger. If you go in with a fluffy brush, it's just going to kind of blow all the shimmers away and you're just going to be left with a matte. The only downside is there are 2 pressed glitters in here. I know a lot of people do not like those, but if you don't mind pressed glitters, it's a great palette. Another great option that is super affordable, this is from LA Girl. Once again, it's not exact formula dupes, but if you are looking for some amazing creamy metallics and beautiful mattes, the LA Girl Pro Mastery eyeshadow palette, I think that's the name of it, but there's several different versions of these 16 pan palettes. I have one that's broken in here, so I can't lift it fully. The metallics in this palette, they are so buttery and creamy. When you go in and just glide your finger in, look at this. It's like a straight up foiled shadow. This palette is definitely underrated in my opinion. I don't hear too many people talk about them, but just like the new nudes, you have some of those soft mauves, you have some deeper, richer, like plummy bronze tones. This goes on sale a lot for like under 10 bucks. I think the original retail price might be around like 12 to $14, but Ulta marks this one down quite often, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I do have two other kind of light rosy mauve palettes that I want to go ahead and get out of the way. Both of these are from K Beauty brands. The first one is from Hamish. I'm not crazy about this palette, to be honest. You can make it work, but this is more of the old school traditional K Beauty formula in my opinion, where it's more of like a light wash of color. You can build up the pigmentation, but it starts off very, very soft. Not bad, but I guess more ideal for a light makeup wearer or a beginner makeup person. Wearer, that sounded weird. And then the other one is from Etude House. I'm pretty sure I do have a tutorial on this as well. This is their Rose Bomb palette. Now when you open this, it looks like it was definitely trying to mimic the new Nudes with these kind of like marbled shadows here. However, these are really firm to the touch. They're densely packed. They're definitely more of a shadow topper. It doesn't have that same creamy consistency as the Huda Beauty one, but the other mattes in here are really nice and pigmented. They don't swatch quite as nicely as they apply on the eyes. That's one thing that I will say. For years, I've talked about this palette way too much. Desert Dusk, this is another one of her larger palettes that are $65. I personally loved this one. I mean, I use this one like crazy. As you can see, has some more like rich orange bronze tones and then these really cool purples. This was originally my top favorite Huda Beauty palette, but recently I've been more into the new Nudes. I still like this palette, I just don't love it as much as I used to. Well, I've always been such a big fan of matching or mixing purple and orange together. And then the last larger Huda Beauty palette I have, this is the Rose Gold Remastered. I would say this is my second favorite now. It's so crazy how your makeup taste changed, because before, like while I liked new Nudes, I thought it was the most boring out of the three, and now it's my absolute favorite. This top row here, I love the metallics in this palette. They're beautiful. Of course, these three shades here. If you just love like a really nice, light, like white gold champagne lid color, I love going in and I'll just dip my finger into all three of these shades. I've been reaching for those three a lot. I wish I had it in me to where I could just depot palettes and just take out the shades that I want. But then I feel so weird. I feel like the rest of the palette would be a waste, because there's no way that I'd want to give like a half empty palette to someone. But perhaps I could just depot everything and then just make my own palette out of the shades that I love, and then depot the other pans and put them in another like empty Z palette or MAC palette for one of my friends or family members. This is my problem. This is why I can't declutter more palettes, because I have like 2 or 3 shades in each palette that I love. However, I think it is time for me, here's a spoiler alert, you will be seeing it, these palettes get decluttered. I have so many of the mini Obsessions palettes, like the original ones, the Mauve Obsessions, Warm Brown Obsessions, Smoky Obsessions, which I still love, but out of the gemstone ones, Topaz, go figure, the Warm Orange was definitely my favorite. I've held on to these for so long because I just like having them all together, but that's such a silly reason. It's just taking up space and I don't want it to go bad. I mean, I feel like, I'm sure other people are like, no, Dana, those are already bad, but yeah, it says 12 months. I keep eyeshadows for so long. I mean, I have freaking relics in my collection that still work fine. So to each their own. But here we go. We have Ruby Obsessions, which, go figure, is just full of really pretty kind of like pink and red ruby shades. The Dana years ago loved these colors, but I just don't really gravitate towards them so much anymore. I do love the brow bone shade in here and this corner shade, but I'm not gonna keep it for those 2 colors. It is really nice, but I'm sure there's a Colourpop palette out there that has these exact same shades for half the price. The other one that I plan on getting rid of is Amethyst Obsessions. While these colors are beautiful, I found that for whatever reason, the pans in here, specifically the metallics, felt way more densely packed than the other Huda Beauty metallics. Like the other Huda Beauties, you could rub your finger in and it was just like an instant wet metallic look on your eyes. These, you really have to get your finger in there or use some Fix Plus. I don't know what it was about Amethyst. I've always heard purples are a harder formula to come by or you create, there we go. But this one just wasn't as great in my opinion. If you still have your eyes on this, I would recommend going with Colourpop It's My Pleasure instead. Not exact dupes, but the same sort of color story. And honestly, I find the formulas in here to be much better. Plus, there's no pressed glitters in It's My Pleasure. Let's go ahead and get this one out of the way. This is the most expensive palette in my collection and I didn't even purchase it myself. My friend Laura got 2 of them, so she gave me one. I definitely appreciated it. I loved it. This is the only Natasha Denona palette I've ever experienced. And to be completely honest, I don't want to sound like ungrateful by any means because I do enjoy it. I don't think it's worth the $128. Like, I know so many people are die-hard Natasha Denona fans, but I found some of the mattes in here to be kind of dry and dusty. The metallics are like rich and beautiful and vibrant, but some of the metallics were just subpar, especially for $128. I feel like every shadow in here should be immaculate. Now, I already know some people who, especially like the die-hard Natasha Denona fans, are screaming right now and being like, how dare you even compare these? Once again, I'm not saying they are dupes. I'm saying if you want this color story, but you don't want to spend $128 on an eyeshadow palette, which I think is like 99.9% of the population, Flower Beauty Suns Blazing, you're gonna get the same sort of colors. Not the same exact formula, not the same exact quality, obviously, but I mean, hey, if you want some yellows, oranges, and bronzes, you can create the same sort of eye look out of them. I haven't even posted this video yet, and I can already like hear the keyboards being like, really, Flower Beauty and Natasha Denona, you're a goblin, but whatever, it's okay. That's just my opinion. All right, next up, I'm gonna talk about this because this is just kind of the random only Nomad product I have in my, I take that back. I do have a highlighter from them. I'm still so new to this brand. They randomly sent me PR. This is the Orient Express palette. And there are some really interesting colors in here. Granted, there's some blues, like there's some shades I haven't even touched in here, but this color right here, Venice, is so unique to my collection. Look at this. It's like this beautiful chartreuse, yellow, golden green type of color. And the formula of these are actually really nice. I don't know why I don't hear more about them. I actually really love several of the mattes in here. Like I said, I haven't used everything, but look at this red. Isn't that beautiful? It's just like a true, like punchy orange red. They blend out beautifully. They stay on the eyes all day. Both mattes and metallics work great. If you guys have a favorite product from Nomad Cosmetics, let me know down below because that's a brand I am interested in diving more into. Then we have this iconic London palette. I received this in, I think it was a glossy box advent calendar. I want to say that this retails for around like 60 something dollars, which I definitely find to be overpriced. The colors in here are beautiful. If you're just looking for a great natural everyday palette, really, this hair, which side are you from? There you go. That has both mattes and metallics. It is nice, but I definitely have other palettes in here, even from the drugstore, that have a creamier, better quality when it comes to formula, pigmentation, longevity, everything. There was like a good 2 weeks where I was reaching for this palette a lot just because I wanted to get the use out of it. It's not bad, it's just not worth the price point. 3 palettes from Sydney Grace. This is from the Temptalia collection. These palettes you can actually like put together and it creates this cute little, oh, here we go, celestial picture. I believe the little dog on the bottom is Melon, her dog that passed away. Seriously, losing pets is so hard. I can't even imagine losing Howard. There are 3 palettes and the palettes come in light and deep versions. Now the difference is that the matte shades in the light are supposed to be, you know, more complementary to light skin, and then the matte shades in the deeper palette are supposed to have a deeper pigment so they really enhance and show up on deeper skin tones. But besides that, I'm pretty sure all the metallics are the same. So let's go ahead and start with this palette here. I always butcher that word. This is my least favorite out of the 3 palettes. These are palettes where, okay, the quality, the colors, everything are beautiful, but I could have easily taken shades from the 3 palettes to create my ideal perfect palette. But I mean, that's just for me. You know, I'm sure there's many people out there who love these like cool tone, smoky greens, blues. But to be honest, in this palette, the only shades that I ever reach for are Umbra, My Constellation, and the Milky Way. Is that how you say that one? This is like this really cool lilac, turquoise, silver, taupey sort of duochrome shade. They're so beautiful. Sydney Grace shadows are freaking incredible. I really wanted to try, oh, that off. Try her cream shadows. I've heard great things about those and they're only $8. But if you've never tried any of her shadows before, even her singles, the blendability is absolutely amazing. They are like definitely high performing shadows. I do really like the shade Interstellar too, but out of the 3, for me personally, that's my least favorite. Radiant Reflection. This entire half of the palette I think is absolutely stunning. You can create some killer looks out of these 6 shades here. Obviously the shades over here are beautiful too, but I'm not crazy about blues and purples, and to be honest, I don't really go for like super yellow golds like this. Final one from Sydney Grace. This is On the Horizon. Now this is a palette where I love Heart Dog. I love these 3 shades here. I love these 3 shades here. The metallics I cannot get enough of. Like Phoenix Awakens, look at this. It is so freaking metallic. Like the formula is so much like the Makeup Geek foiled shadows where they're soft, but they're super, super pigmented. Magellan's Light is beautiful. Lunar Illumination, Heart Dog. I mean, I already have swatches going up for you guys, but look at those metallics. Aren't they freaking stunning? Ugh. I love them. Urban Decay On the Run. I do have the Naked Cyber palette, which I did talk about in a recent speed reviews video. I'm decluttering that. Sorry, wasn't a fan. I felt like no matter what shadows I used, I always ended up with some sort of like duochromy peachy look, and there was really only one matte shade in it that I liked. Not for me. If you love it, I'm definitely happy for you. However, Urban Decay On the Run, this is a palette that goes on sale all the time. I feel like this is very split down the middle. The people either love it or they think it sucks and it's a waste of money. I personally love it. This palette screams fall to me. Just reminds me of like crisp, crunchy leaves and just, I don't know, you have a little bit of everything. You've got some like dirty, grungy olive greens. You have some great matte shades just to create an everyday look. Then you do have some like plummy shades. I think it's beautiful and I feel like it flatters so many different eye colors. I will say the formula isn't consistent throughout the whole palette. There's definitely some metallics that are much better than the other. Smog is a shade that I love just all over my lid. If you go in with this and then just some like bronzer in your crease and then Danessa Myricks Nebula on top, thank me later. It's like the most beautiful bronzy eye ever. Yeah, I definitely think the Urban Decay Born to Run palette is my favorite palette that they've released. All right, next up. Do you guys remember this? Wow, this is an oldie but a goodie. And to be honest, I have not touched this palette in probably 4 to 5 years, but it's a palette that I can't let go of because when I first bought this palette, it was the only palette that I used for like a solid year. I mean, I would dabble with some like Colourpop shadows here and there, but really this was the only palette that I was wanting to use. I love how many mattes there are in here, clearly. I love this brow bone shade. I used to always go in with Stila Bronzed Belle just to add some sort of glitter to all the mattes. This was such an MVP palette for me for so long. So it's just a palette I can't declutter specifically for nostalgic reasons. However, if you've still been looking at that palette, but you just don't want to pay aren't those palettes like 40? I feel like 42 or $48. It's been so long since I bought an ABH palette. These kind of have the same sort of color stories. We have a Wet n Wild Rosé in the air. So in this palette, you have one shimmer and then a ton of, there's like a satin shade, a shimmer, and then the rest are mattes. The quality isn't gonna be the same. However, if you're just looking for a really nice, easy matte, like burnt orange, pink sort of look, you can get the same sort of style from this palette. These retail for, I think, $4.99, or even better than the Wet n Wild one, the CoverGirl True Naked Sunsets. These palettes are so good. I know typically when you think of CoverGirl, you might think like foundation or mascara. Besides that, I don't know, I don't feel like CoverGirl has ever had like a game-changing or like viral product. These palettes are so good, both the mattes and the shimmers. I know sometimes matte or like good matte eyeshadows are hard to come by at the drugstore, but these CoverGirl ones are really, really nice. I mean, they definitely pack a punch because some of them, specifically like these 2 shades right here, sometimes they can leave a little bit staining behind on the eyes. No irritation, but just if you've ever used a really punchy red or like maroon shadow, you know, sometimes you do just get left with a little bit of staining on the eyelid, but I'm telling you, these palettes are so nice. Soft Glam, this is another favorite, and look, same exact brow bone shade I have hit pan on. I love that one. It complements my skin perfectly. If you're just looking for an everyday palette, if you want to go in and create something very easy, classy, minimal, you can do it with this palette. If you want to create something smoky, sexy, and glam, you can do it with this palette. And I love the black in here. It's a type of black that you can build up, so you can keep it really smoky. You can build it up gradually. It's not one where it's like instantly like, bam, okay, you're done. You can't soften this up. Like, it's a very blendable one. So this is a palette that I find Anytime I travel, I typically take this palette because I know I can create any sort of look and have my eyeliner in the palette and I won't feel like I'm missing something. This is plenty because you do have a couple of metallic options in here if you are looking for something shimmery on the lid, or keep it not basic, but classic with a matte eye. And then the very last ABH palette I have, this is one of my favorites if I'm wanting to create like a really fun, colorful look. This is the Jackie Aina palette. She freaking killed it with this one. I think the color story is so cool and fun and unique. I've mentioned this recently. The only shade I don't really get too much use out of is like Supreme and Big Wig, but when I first got it, I still loved colors like that. Let's take a dive into Nabla because I have several palettes here. Another palette kind of like Soft Glam, where if you're just looking for an everyday sort of palette, this is it natural or just side by side? Nabla is another brand where I know it's been around for a while, but it's a brand that I feel like not enough people give love to. Hold please, water break. Now Nabla is also sold at Ulta. It's been around for a while, but it's a brand that I feel like not enough people give love to because they have some really interesting eyeshadow formulations. Better Society is one of my favorite shades in here. I just love this one all over the lid. It's like a deeper kind of like camel-y rose gold, if that makes sense. But then you have these little flecks of just this like iridescent shimmer. I love that all over the lid. Then you have plenty of mattes in here. So not saying that they're dupes by any means, but if you're just looking for an easy everyday sort of palette, you would be great with either of these options. This is probably my least favorite Nabla palette in my collection and one that you will see in a declutter. It's not even that it's bad, it's just that I don't really get quite as much use out of it. So you have a couple of rows of just like everyday sort of shades, but then you do have some cool like punchy gem tones here. However, I will say Play Hard is a really cool color. When you first pick it up, it's a little bit chunky, but as you blend it out, it's one of those perfect like topper shades if you're really just wanting to go in and transform one of these mattes, kind of like a chameleon eyeshadow. It's pretty, but I just don't use it quite as much as my other Nabla palettes. Now, my favorite Nabla palette out of all of them is the Just Dreamy 2. I have a full face of Nabla Cosmetics where I did a really cool tutorial using this palette. This is such a unique palette. I've mentioned it before, but the colors are very just like dreamy, celestial. The formulas in here are so cool too. I forget the name of this one. It's almost like a satin, but matte at the same time. Like, you have to touch it in order to know what I'm talking about, but it's just this really deep, rich, like burgundy plum color. It's amazing. I like to use that just as like a lid shade or as my liner shade. Then you have some of their foiled shadows in here. You have one of their pressed glitters. This palette is beautiful. I feel like it's definitely unique in my collection. Anytime I use this palette, I always love my final look. It's just, oh, it's a good one. Then I have two of their Cutie palettes. So these are just 6-pan shadows. First up, we have Wild Berry. I really like this duochrome shade here. And this pink is one of the most like vibrant, intense pinks I have in my collection. That is another shadow though that can stain. And then the other one is the Platinum palette. This you can create such cool, glam, smoky looks with. Check out the two metallics in the center. I mean, this looks like straight up tin foil, and then this one is just this amazing, like rich slate, just, oh, smoky goodness. Out of all the NARS palettes that I have in my collection, these are the only two that are still available. The rest were like holiday limited edition palettes. This palette screams fall in my opinion. If you are looking to purchase a palette for this season, let it be this one. This is the NARS Climax palette. I feel like the swatches don't do it justice because I'm telling you, this on the eyes is so much prettier than what it looks swatched. This metal green shade right here with this blended out and then a little bit of this darker brown like on the outer corner, stunning. So beautiful. Easily one of my favorite palettes that NARS has ever launched. And I love that it's like small and compact. Then we have the Mini Orgasm palette. I swear when this first launched, it was more than $25 because I remember like even when showing it, I was like, I feel stupid showing this because it's so expensive for such a tiny palette. But this they did a really good job on. It doesn't come in the same packaging anymore. They re-released it for the holidays. It's almost like corally, but like pinky orange at the same time. But what I love are these metallic shades here. You can kind of use them as toppers or just on the lid on their own. This is another palette where every time I use it, I'm always happy with the look that I get. And it's a great little companion palette. NARS shadows, the formulas kind of remind me, not the metallics, but the mattes kind of remind me of just like old school MAC shadows. You know, I feel like these days lots of people are kind of like meh about MAC, which is so crazy because back in the day, MAC was like the line that we all wanted. But the way that MAC is like a buildable formula, that's kind of what NARS is too, you know, just like with their blushes. It's a very easy formula to work with because you can take your time to build it up. You're not gonna pick up shadow on a brush and it's instantly gonna be pigmented to where you're sitting here working to blend it. It's something that you like gradually build up the pigmentation. So it's so easy to create a very like not fused, what's the word that I'm thinking out? Like faded out sort of eye. Whatever. Okay, next up, let's go over some K-Beauty palettes. I have several of the Coringco Shabam eyeshadow bar palettes. These are just little 6-pan palettes. The prices of these kind of like fluctuate constantly, whether you're shopping at YesStyle, which is my go-to, Style Vana. These are mini palettes that really pack a punch. The metallics in here are freaking incredible. Like, look at this ruby garnet shade. Isn't that stunning? This one is in Shining Night. So in here you have 3 mattes, and then these 2 shadows here, like this one almost has a little bit of a squishiness to it, kind of like the Colourpop ones, but it's not as creamy. This is more of like a glitter topper. You definitely can go on your bare lid, but this over one of these matte shades is beautiful. And then over here you just have a super creamy wet metallic. Shine Night. This has been the one that I've been using the most lately because I love this kind of like orange sherbet shade down here. This with, I did a recent K-Beauty video where I went in with one of, it's black something. They have a little glitter topper that I went in on top of this orange shade. Stunning. I was using nothing but like orange sherbet shades for forever. Finally got out of that rut. Would be more than happy to fall back into it. Next up, we have Fairy Night. This is another pretty one. However, there is a pressed glitter in it, but this pressed glitter is worth it. This is like orange creamsicle dreams. It is so freaking stunning. It's not as gritty as the Colourpop pressed glitters, but like you can feel the glitter in it, but since there's different shapes, like you have itty bitty flecks of shimmer, then you have like the larger pieces of glitter. I find that the glitter though is like shaved down thinner than the Colourpop one, so it doesn't feel quite as gritty. But I know not everyone likes to risk putting glitter on their eyes, which totally makes sense. You're being much smarter than me, but I risk it for the biscuit because I freaking love glitter, and I don't think I'll grow out of that. This one is from the brand Moonshot. Moonshot makes some of my all-time favorite cushion foundations. This is the, is it Rêve de Paris? Petit. I don't speak French, sorry. While I do like this palette, I've been holding on to it more for an upcoming K-Beauty video. It's not even that it's bad, it's just that I prefer the formula of these Shabam ones more, but it is a really nice compact palette. Then finally we have, one of y'all told me how to pronounce this. It's like BBIA or BBIA. I want to say it was like BBIA. Probably wrong. This one is in Trotstar, which that name kills me because like diarrhea is the trots. So like Trotstar sounds like someone who's like really good at having diarrhea. Please don't hate me. So in this palette, you have a pressed glitter. These actually do feel like the Colourpop shadows. Like look at these 3 here. Well, no, okay, this one kind of is a pressed glitter too, but look at these 2 shades. Aren't those stunning? The mattes are very, very soft, but you're able to build them up. So they don't look that soft on the eyes if you're willing to go in and adjust the coloring, the saturation, but it's a really nice palette if you're just looking for some fun metallics. I have a little complaint with this one. The Natural Nudes. I talk about this palette so much, easily in my top 5 palettes of all time, and it kills me. Like this is a palette that I'm very protective over. I've said this a million times. I think it's like the ideal bridal palette. As you can see, the larger strips are mattes and then the smaller squares are coordinating little like shimmers. There's people that say that this is like dry and dusty and crusty. And I'm like, are we talking about the same palette? Like, I don't find anything dry, dusty, and crusty about this palette. Whenever I hear someone say that, I'm almost like, your mom is dry, dusty, and crusty, because I have zero complaint. This palette is always so beautiful. It's always treated me so well, but I know we all have different opinions, so that's okay. But you know, like everyone has that one product where someone says it's not good and you're just like, ew. I don't get it, because this one is so good. And I feel like every friend that I've recommended this palette to, they always end up loving it. So I don't know, maybe there was a weird, in my head, this is what I say. I'm like, there must have been a bad batch, because I just can't imagine anyone describing this palette as not good, because it's so good. It's so beautiful. I love the shades in here, and I'm always so happy with the look that I get. I know I do have a tutorial with this palette as well. Okay, and then the other Too Faced palette that I have in my collection, I decluttered a ton of my Too Faced palettes. Like I had so many of those mini cardboard ones that I decluttered, even like the mini tin ones that I decluttered. And the only chocolate bar palette that I kept was the chocolate gold. To be honest, if I decluttered this, it wouldn't be one that I probably missed, because I really only keep this palette for like 3 or 4 shades. Rich Girl is a favorite in here. I do like Holla for $1, and I do like Love and Cocoa. I'd be fine without this palette, but I allowed myself to keep it because I was like, you know what? You are such a good pony. You got rid of all of your other Too Faced palettes that you deserve to keep this one, okay? Okay. I have 2 palettes from J.Cat Beauty that I just recently talked about in a speed reviews video. We have Viva La Fiesta and then Viva La Musical. I'm not gonna say much about these. I don't think I even swatched these for you, because I literally just swatched every single shade in that speed reviews video, but for the sake of this video, here's what they look like. You can go check out that video for more thoughts. However, a J.Cat Beauty palette that is freaking incredible, the Dia and Noche palette. This is the Noche one, so the daytime one had like more like fun, orangey, brighter colors. But you guys, oh, sorry, some of them are like falling apart, because these shadows here are like pressed pigments. This is a palette where you got some A honor roll students in here. For instance, most of the metallics, but then the mattes are like a C+ student. It's like they work, but they don't put in the effort unless you tell them to. So while the mattes swatch kind of dry, they apply on the eyes better, but it's one that you have to build up. You got to talk to, give some love to, and then it's like suddenly that C rises up to like a B+, but it starts as a C student, especially in comparison to the A honor roll students. And it's only $7.99. Does that make sense? Anyways, okay, moving on. Another super affordable palette. This is the only Profusion palette that I still have in my collection. This is the Mirage 35 shade palette. These come in several different color stories, but as I mentioned earlier, I love oranges and purples together. This is like a fiesta in a palette. There's definitely some hits and misses in here. Some of the mattes are very like dusty and ashy, but then there's other mattes that are absolutely amazing. The metallics are so good. I don't know if you'll be able to tell on camera, but this orange shade right here has a dip. This is a shade that I used to reach for all the time, anytime I was wanting like a rusty orange crease. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? It's like the perfect pumpkin orange. It's stunning. But then, like I said, there's definitely some mattes in here that are like, you put it on and you can be like, and it's gone. So for the price point, I can't complain if you're getting 35 shadows for under 10 bucks or for 10 bucks, but it's like 75% of them work well. I'm okay with it. All right, we have another drugstore palette. This is from Makeup Revolution. It's the Soph X Extra Spice. I actually bought her original palette, and then I bought this one too because I was really happy with the first one. However, I noticed I did get more use out of this one. Unfortunately, this is a palette where I've noticed that it's turned. Anytime I say that, all I can think of is Mater from Cars, when he's like, don't eat the pistachio ice cream, or the pistachio ice cream has turned, something like that. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, it's not as good as it used to be. Like, a lot of them have hard pan. I tried scraping it, but it was still a little bit kind of just crumbly and dry. It wasn't the same. This shade right here, Infinity, it used to be way more intense than this. I mean, that still looks good, but before it was almost like wet and creamy to the touch. I tried using this the other day, and unfortunately, a lot of the mattes were just like dusty and dry. This is from Koki Cosmetics. It's one of the artist palettes in Goddess. This one honestly blew me away. I feel like its swatch is kind of boring, but if you just love warm shades, this palette is perfect. The price point is great. The packaging is nice. I feel like the packaging is very high-end feeling, like there's a great weight to it. And the formula of these shadows is actually really, really nice. Next up, we have Baby Got Peach. A lot of these harder pan packaging palettes I decluttered for the longest time. I wanted them just because, just like the Huda Beauty Mini Obsessions, I liked having a collection, like a stack of all of them together, but then I realized that was stupid. This one honestly reminds me a lot of the Sweet Talk palette, which is one of my all-time favorites. There is one pressed glitter in here, but the rest of the shades are stunning. If you love like soft, corally, peachy shades, you would love Baby Got Peach. Then the Sweet Talk palette. This is actually my second one because one of them I hit pan on the shade Meadow and then I broke one of the other shades. Then we have the Sailor Moon. I did an entire video of the Colourpop Sailor Moon collection. This, honestly, I keep for collector's purposes. I remember watching Sailor Moon every single day after school when we lived in Okinawa, so I just have a soft spot in my heart for Sailor Moon. So there's no way I could ever get rid of this. But to be honest, like, I don't really ever use this palette. I just like looking at it. It's not even that the shades are bad, but I just, like, if I'm craving a shade like this area here, I'll go in with Baby Got Peach or Sweet Talk. Wow, brain fart. Next up, we have Colourpop Orchid You Not. I just did an entire video of this collection as well. While the colors are beautiful, I think I prefer Just My Pleasure. I do like some of the deeper shades in here, but as I mentioned in that Orchid video, when I wear dark colors like this, I just feel like I look so much older and just harsh. It's just not really my vibe anymore. But if you love purples, especially like deeper, richer, plummy purples, you would really enjoy that. Then we have Going Coconuts. This is a palette I go so back and forth on. This is a true neutral palette. In the pan, a lot of them look a little bit more warm, but then on the eyes, it's like some shades start off looking a little bit cool, but then it truly does blend out into a classic neutral shade. If you are just like everyday sort of makeup wear, you don't like rich oranges, you don't like slate grays, this would be an ideal palette for you. There's no pressed glitters. You do have one of those mattes that have the glitters in it that I mentioned earlier. This is a I mean, it's hard to say that anything from Colourpop is new with how often they release, but this is the Lust for Dusk palette. I love the color story of this one. A mix of everything. I actually really like this one just because so many of other Colourpop's releases have been like very monochromatic base, where I feel like in this one, you get, it's almost like a charcuterie board. You get a little bit of everything. Then we have Off Melrose. I'm pretty sure Colourpop described this one as like a model off-duty palette. I see like someone going in and using Down to Earth just as like a shadowing, or if you're just wanting a soft hint of shimmer, going in with Trading Post just a little bit on the center of your lid. I do have one other Colourpop palette, and this is really my only true cool tone palette in my collection. This is the Stone Cold Fox. I know I have a tutorial of this one. This is actually really pretty. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about this because I just don't wear a lot of cool tone shadows, but I love that they left this kind of like light mauve row in here or column in here. You can go in and create something really soft and natural or really smoky. Nice Guy is such a beautiful shade. And like I said, I don't have too many grays in my collection, so this was a really nice addition. Definitely one that I would keep in my collection for the long haul. Then I have two from Persona Cosmetics. Both of these are like their updated packaging. The original Identity palette was like cardboard. Love the original Identity palette. The shimmers aren't over the top. It's more of like a natural metallic sort of shade on your lid. Nothing like, you know, Colourpop, wet, metallic, in your face. It's just more subdued. It's a great palette just for anyone, whether we're talking, you know, a younger teen or a teacher or a grandma. It just kind of works for everyone. Then we have the Identity 2. To be honest, I really only reach for this palette for the mattes, and then I do like the one shade Resilient, which is just a really nice bronze, but I'm just not crazy about the jewel tones in here. If I decluttered this palette, I don't really think I would miss it. It's not bad, but Identity palette, the original, is definitely much more up my alley than Identity 2. All right, two colorful palettes. We have the Juvia's Place palettes. I've talked about her formula so many times. If you are looking for something intensely pigmented, something that you barely need any product on your brush, these are it. They blend out beautifully. I've had the Nubian 2 for forever, and I still have yet to hit pan. Like, there's a slight dip in it, but these just seriously pack a punch. Incredibly pigmented, beautiful. I love the matte shades Morocco and Madagascar. Definitely my favorite Juvia's Place palette. Then I have Masquerade Mini. This was more of an impulse buy. I love the bottom half of this palette, but to be honest, I could get rid of the top half and be totally fine. This might be a palette that I declutter because I really do love the shades down here, specifically Casablanca and Cairo, but the top 2 rows, I think I've barely touched. There are 2 other Colourpop Quints in here. We have Ballad. This I can definitely get rid of because I feel like I have pretty much all of the shades that I would want in here in the Stone Cold Fox palette. Then we have the shade Crush. I love this shade right here called Struck. It's another one of those mattes with tons of glitter in it. However, I feel like the glitter goes even further in this pan than some of the other Colourpop formulas that are like this. That's the main reason I've been holding on to this one. And Essence recently released these little 6-pan palettes. These retail for $3.99, and there are some killer palettes in here. My 2 personal favorites, we have Coral Me Maybe. I've said this before, but anytime I say the word coral, all I can think of is Rick from The Walking Dead. I've heard from several people that this is a good dupe or alternative to the M Cosmetics Sun Something palette. I don't personally own that one. I do really want to try her liquid blushes though. I would say out of all of the palettes though, Coral Me Maybe is definitely my favorite. I can't believe that these are only $3.99. I was hesitant to try these for a while because I've tried other shadow palettes from Essence, like the ones that came in the cardboard packaging that were, I think they were like city themed or something like that. Those sucked. They were dusty and crappy. If you've tried those, I'm telling you, these, or at least like this exact palette is totally different than that formula. Then we have Bronze This Way, just kind of, you know, some bronze, brown, nice shades thrown in there. My least favorite, Ice Ice Baby. That's just because I don't really use blues too often. And to be honest, this matte blue here, I was trying to do a blue look the other day and I hated it. Like it just didn't, it was patchy. It didn't blend out very nicely. Then we have Dancing Green. I think the 2 mattes in here are actually so nice. I do wish that they would have changed this metallic here for like a deeper, super dark jade green. I think would have been a better option than doing 2 of these lighter sort of like sage metallic shades. Taupe It Up, which in my opinion, this pulls way more gray than taupe. This is another palette where I noticed several of the mattes were pretty patchy. Altogether, this was another one that I just wasn't that crazy about. If you love gray shadows, maybe, but to be honest, I would rather put that $3.99 towards getting the Stone Cold Fox palette whenever it goes on sale. I think you would be much happier with that versus this guy. And then finally, okay, do you guys say mauve or mauve? I've always said mauve, but then when I read this, I feel like I like to mauve it would sound better than mauve it. I don't know, but mauve is one of those words where I've heard that is the correct way to say it, but mauve reminds me of someone that would say vase instead of vase. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't like it. All right, but here is the mauve one, which is almost more like light lilac. I had high hopes for this one and I wasn't crazy about it. It's not bad, but I don't know. I found it to be underwhelming. I have 2 of the LORAC Unzipped palettes. I thought everything else was drugstore. I lied. We have these 2 here. For the longest time, the Unzipped and Unzipped Gold were my all-time favorite shadows, but I swatched these when I swatched these last night, I actually had to call my friend Laura because both of us were, I mean, obsessed with these palettes for months and months. It was all that we were wearing. And I was like, were these shadows always dry? Like when I swatched them, they felt so dry and I swore they used to be creamier. She said that that's how they always were. I guess I just didn't remember them to be that way. These are palettes that I have kept in my collection specifically for nostalgic purposes because I have not reached for them in years, like years. And I even told her, I was like, I think I'm gonna declutter them. And she's like, what? No, you'll regret it. And this is the thing. She's really the only one that makes me regret decluttering things because she'll wear something. I'm like, oh, what is that? And then it'll be something that I decluttered. And then I'm like, damn it. But I don't use these anymore. So I have a feeling you will be seeing those in the declutter video. And then I have 2 palettes from e.l.f. This is one of their newer ones that came in that Electric Mood collection. I think this was limited edition, but their collection is still on the site. I think it might be on sale. This is a palette that it's like 30% of it is great, and then the rest of it is kind of bleh. That's the thing with these palettes though. They're very hit or miss. Some of them are incredible, and then some of them absolutely suck. But I keep this palette for the shade right here, Pound Coin. This is just this amazing, like glazy, slightly duochrome, orange, but like green chameleon type of color. It's so pretty as a topper or on its own. Some of them are just almost too firmly pressed to where a brush doesn't work, but then you really have to go in there with your finger to make it work, and the mattes weren't my favorite. However, the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette. This is a palette I know I have a video on. I don't really use anything on the ocean side. I can't even open it because my favorite shade, Mojave, is broken. If you are looking for like the best like dirty diaper green sort of color, oh, it's so beautiful. I love, love, love the green section of this palette. If you pair it with one of their eye shimmers in, I think like Dirty Martini or Jalapeno something, it's the prettiest, just like grungy green smoky eye. If you love blues too, this palette would be right up your alley. Both the mattes and the metallics in here are great. I just don't wear blues that often, but I keep this palette for this region here because it's stunning. I love it. One of the newer Wet n Wild Color Icon palettes. This is in Call Me Sunshine. I was very disappointed in this. I don't know why they changed. These are so dry. And like even the metallics, when I go in with my finger, it's like I really have to scrub it on to get a good color payoff. Wasn't impressed. Do not recommend. And the very final palette I have here, this is a new release from Revlon. It's a Big Bad palette. When I opened this, I was like, wait, Revlon? Like this is so not Revlon's vibes, but some of the shades in here are actually really beautiful. Specifically this guy here. I don't know if these were meant to be highlighters or what the deal is. Oh, it does say Big Bad Face and Eye Palette. Yeah, so I think these are meant to be highlighters, but neither of these work as highlighters for me. This one's way too glittery and then this one's too dark, but this as an eyeshadow is beautiful. It's just this really nice, like dirty bronzy shade. Some of the other colors aren't the best. It's like a color that you really do want some sort of tacky base with or coordinating base just to amplify the color, just because, I mean, it's a Revlon shadow, you know. It's like you're not gonna get like Colourpop sort of vibrancy, but you can make it work. Kind of like those C+ students that we talked about earlier. But this guy right here, A on a roll his whole life. All right. So there you have it. Wow, this video was so long. If you made it to the end, I love you. I hope you guys enjoyed. It took forever to swatch all these, so I hope you liked the swatches and found it helpful. Let me know what other videos you guys would like to see coming up. If you guys are interested in that declutter video, I have a declutter video coming up either way because I decluttered like everything else besides eyeshadows, but as I mentioned earlier, this video was to help me declutter my eyeshadow collection. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys have an amazing day. Go do something nice for yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.